Hi guys! Okay, so I wanted to come on and talk about how I experience my borderline symptoms. I did get diagnosed with 9 out of 9 when I got diagnosed. However, I do want to note that if you aren't diagnosed with 9 out of 9, it doesn't mean you struggle any less. You can struggle just as much, and I want that to be known. So, that being said, I do want to get into how I experience each one, and I will go over the symptom I'm experiencing and how I have experienced that throughout my life. It will be hard to go into full depth as to how I've experienced them extensively. However, I will be able to go over it in somewhat of a general perspective. Okay, so the first one is frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. So, a fear of abandonment. This displays in many ways of my life. I wasn't very sure what fear of abandonment was until I got diagnosed. And even into my diagnosis, I wasn't really sure how it displayed. I did notice that there were times in my life where I would feel like I couldn't manage somebody leaving me. When I was a teenager, my partners would leave me and I couldn't understand why. It would consume my life. I felt like I could not go on any longer without that person and I needed them. I would learn this eventually to be an FP, a favorite person. However, I did struggle a lot with that growing up. As I started getting older and started getting into work, I started realizing that my fear of abandonment displayed in different ways. So now that I look back at working, I can notice that my fear of abandonment displayed in the context of when I felt that I was going to get fired, I would leave or I would isolate and just not go back because I just wouldn't want to get fired. And I felt that that was kind of like getting abandoned, like they were just leaving me, I guess. So I would leave work a lot, which was very difficult. My fear of abandonment basically stems in relationships, whether that be familial, platonic, or romantic. They display in all aspects. In platonic relationships with friends, my fear of abandonment can display in ways of thinking that they're going to leave me eventually, that they don't even like me. I just feel like eventually they're going to abandon me. And when a friend does get out of my life, it consumes me. It's like getting out of a breakup with a partner. It's really hard for me to go through. But because of my fear of abandonment, I constantly have friendships that are all over the place. And I will get into that more frequently later. But with my abandonment, it does display in many aspects of my life. I don't often notice that I'm feeling abandonment until it happens. And even when it happens, I often didn't realize that that was actually abandonment that I was feeling. I just thought that I was feeling really sad. Somebody was leaving me. I didn't know what to do. I thought it was normal behavior. But the way that I felt it was so extensive, I literally felt like my life could not go on if somebody was going to abandon me or leave me. When my partner was away from me for too long, I would consume my mind with, oh my God, they're going to leave me. They're not coming back. They don't love me. When my partner would sleep, I'd get extreme anxiety. When my friends would sleep, I would get extreme anxiety, thinking that just I was feeling abandonment, even just from them sleeping. So it was little things like that it displayed in my life in so many ways. And the fear of abandonment is something that kind of lingers in my life, and it's always there. I've been in a 9-year relationship, and still, even at the end of it, I always feared they were going to abandon me. Even after being with them for 9 years, I would still question if they loved me or if they were going to leave me, because I truly felt like they always were going to leave me. And I still can't really identify why I feel this way, why I think everybody's going to leave, but I do. And at the end of the day, even if I don't voice it or act on it and leave, I still feel that way, and it's still there. So I still feel that sense of abandonment, whether I act on it or not. I just feel as though everybody is going to leave me all the time. And when it does happen, I freak out and don't know what to do with myself. And then there's other times when I know it's going to happen, so I will be the one to leave first so that it doesn't happen and it doesn't affect me, because then I'm leaving first. But it doesn't really work out like that because it does affect me. It's just in my mind, because I'm leaving first, I can't get hurt, even though I'm still hurt after. So it's really interesting because the fear of abandonment, I'll have this fear of abandonment and it will actually lead me to engaging in behaviors that actually cause that abandonment to happen, and my partner to just leave, or my friends to leave, because my behaviors of that fear of abandonment are so severe they don't know how to handle it. And it's exhausting, I get it, but I don't even know how to handle it. So it's really frustrating because I don't want to push people away because I have a fear of abandonment. I don't want them to abandon me. But then my behaviors of being so scared of them leaving me pushes them to leave me. So it's really frustrating. Now, that is kind of a little general aspect of how I experience real or imagined abandonment. Now, a pattern of unstable and intense relationships. This is something I've struggled with my entire life. I have moved so much. I've been to 14 schools, all different cities. I've been in and out with having friends and friend groups. Particularly unstable relationships with friends would be as getting along, fighting, hating each other, making up, breaking up, all that. I would get really mad at my friends, and then we would just get along again and it would just be fixed. I had really inconsistent relationships. I would get in relationships with people very quickly. It would become very intense very quickly, and it would consume me. I would become very attached with every person that I dated to the point of obsession where I could not live without them. And this would happen in every relationship, whether that be a person I was dating for 2 months or a person I was dating for 5 months. Now, that being said, I was not single since I was about 12. So I had always kind of been in relationships, in and out of them. I would date people and then get out of that relationship and feel like I needed to date somebody else because I couldn't be by myself. I hated being alone. My partners were extremely toxic. That being said, it still in my mind was better than being alone, so I would consistently get in these relationships. However, because I was not healing or working on myself, I was literally dating the same person, different face, same person. So that was very hard for me. Unstable relationships is something I still struggle with in my 20s. I don't have very consistent friendships. I isolate a lot now as an adult because over the course of my life, I've had such unstable relationships that it kind of makes me isolate now in fear of those relationships. So a lot of the time, I won't really get into relationships fearing that I'm gonna ruin them or they're gonna leave me eventually. It's eventually gonna end. Going back to the fear of abandonment. So they all kind of work in together. So, identity disturbance. I struggle tremendously in sense of my identity. I don't really have a sense of style. It's always fluctuating. I'm always changing my style. I don't really know what my preferred style is. I don't really have a favorite color. If somebody asks my favorite movie, I have no idea. I don't really know much about myself. I've tried doing like inner child work, learning my core values, but at the end of the day, I still struggle a lot with my identity. I have no idea who I am. I have a tremendous amount of imposter syndrome that I struggle with, and I always feel as though my self-image is so distorted. Like, I have no idea who I am. I am so hard on myself in terms of how I look all the time. I'm just constantly, at a loss of my sense of self. I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm 26 at this point. So, I mean, it's getting better at this point. Like, I'm starting to understand, I like psychology and that's what I'm in school for. And I'm learning these things, but I still struggle with my identity and understanding who I am all the time. I really struggle in that aspect, and I have to remind myself who I am. I have to remind myself that, you're a blogger, you're a mental health advocate, you do this, you do that, and I have to remind myself of these things. But I still struggle with identity disturbance and my self-image. And now on top of having an unstable self-image, I also struggle with body dysmorphia. So mix the two together, and I honestly have no idea how I really look any of the time. Like, I just have such a warped sense of how I look, and it really distorts a lot of my life. It brings a lot of insecurities in my life that are really hard to diminish. A lot of, my unstable self-image stems in, they're going to leave me, my partner. They don't want to be with me. I'm ugly. I'm this. And, I don't know. I don't have a sense of style. I don't even know who I am. Do I even love them? Do I not love them? It's just all over the place. I have such an unstable sense of myself and what I want in life and what I need. And, what I like, and it just really is conflicting. So, impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging. So, could be spending a lot, substance abuse, etc. I have had a lot of impulsivity in my life. I am sober. I'm going to be 6 years sober on the 7th, which I believe is next week. So really soon. But I did struggle a lot with impulsivity when I was an alcoholic. I still do now, that I'm still sober, because I still struggle in terms of like my reactions, etc. with impulsivity. But before, when I was drinking, it was more sleeping with people I didn't want to sleep with, spending all my money, recklessly driving, making horrible decisions, etc. Now that I'm sober, I don't make such horrible decisions based on my life that will really affect me in life. It's more so in my reactions, and my impulsive spending is not spending on others and spending my last paycheck. It's buying something that I don't really need. So it displays in different ways, but I am impulsive in a lot of ways. I'm impulsive in terms of I'll respond to an email really quickly without even reading the email, and then I have a reaction that I don't want instead of a response. And so my impulsivity is something I'm really trying to manage now, but it's really hard to manage because it shows up in so many different ways. I'll be impulsive in terms of what I say or what I do. I'll be impulsive in clicking send sometimes. Like my impulsivity takes over me, and sometimes I have to just tone it down a bit. Actually, all the time I have to tone it down a bit. It's really hard to manage that part of my life. But I am telling you now, getting sober has helped tremendously. It did not make my life easier, but it did make it more manageable. And without getting sober, I would not be able to have managed that impulsive aspect of my borderline as much as I am now. So recurrent suicidal behaviors is something I have struggled with since I was really young. I started noticing my first suicidal thoughts looking back, probably around age 9. I have always thought this way. It was not until my 20s that I learned that thinking this way was not normal. Something would happen very small, and I would just all of a sudden want out. My mind would want out constantly, and I would just always want to die, and I didn't want to be here anymore. I couldn't live. The smallest thing just set that off, and there was not a day that passed that I didn't want out. And I still, as an adult, really struggle with suicidal thoughts. They're not as prominent. It does tend to come when there's an extremely distressing moment. When I feel like I can't get out, or I can't control the situation or manage it or handle it effectively, then my mind wants out. So I have struggled with suicidal thoughts ever since I was really young. I'm not going to go too much into detail as I don't want to trigger people with stuff like that. But I've been in and out of hospitals since I was very young, admitted several times because of my suicidal behaviors. However, this was a pattern, and it's interesting because that is a consistent pattern that somebody does have borderline, and not one person picked this up. It was just depression and anxiety always. So it's really interesting to me. But I have lived with these thoughts since I was 9 years old, and again, I did not know until I was 20. So I had them all throughout high school. When breakups would happen, it was tremendously difficult on me. Breakups with friends, anything. When people bullied me in school, I didn't know how to survive that. But I made it through, and I am living proof that you can make it through. And I know that being a teen can be extremely difficult. That was when I struggled the most. I felt like I couldn't get away from my parents. I felt that there was no hope. To be honest, the only thing that was keeping me alive was knowing that it was going to get better eventually. Had I known how my 20s would have gone, I probably wouldn't have made it. So I'm really glad that I thought that. And to be completely honest, it is getting better as time goes on. I'm just learning to manage these symptoms more. So even though being in your 20s is really difficult, and I wish somebody had told me that rather than telling me my 20s was the best years of my life, because it isn't. It's a lot of growth, it's a lot of work, and it's hard. Your 20s is really well. You learn a lot if you want to. You can put in a lot of effort into growth, and your 20s can really make or break your future, choosing on how you want to, put that effort into it. For me personally, I know it's just going to keep getting better. Obviously, things are going to happen in life, and it's not like things are going to happen. It's inevitable. But in terms of my self-confidence and, understanding myself, I am slowly getting there. I do know that eventually I will get to a point where suicidal thoughts don't cross my mind, as at this rate in my life, they are coming and going, whereas they used to be so prominent. And a lot of that is affected by my environment, who I'm with, who I'm around, what's going on in my life, if I'm making money, if I'm, you know what I mean? So it's important to understand all these factors because they can really affect your life with borderline, and understanding how much they affect your life can really help you. A lot of our healing can happen within our environment and what is going on in our day-to-day lives. So we need to look at what we can change in that to try and make life better, because it's hard living with borderline, and you need to do things that you probably don't want to do most of the time, like getting out of bed, doing things like that to make yourself feel better. Because at the end of the day, nothing's going to just make this better. We have to push through it. And it's unfortunate. Living with borderline is hell at times, but actually most times, the only time it's ever really good for me is when I'm in a euphoric episode. And even then, I know a crash is coming soon. So it's really important to identify these things and understand that too. You are going to eventually get better if you put in the work. You are not doomed. BPD is not a life sentence. I've struggled with suicidal thoughts most of my life, but again, it is important to note that it does a lot revolve around my environment and who I'm with, what's going on in my life. So, chronic feelings of emptiness. This is something I have struggled with my entire life. I can't really explain that sense of emptiness. When I was growing up, if friends would leave sleepovers, I would feel extremely empty. I didn't know what to do with myself. It's really hard to explain that feeling unless you have borderline and understand what it feels like to have that sense of emptiness. I just always feel very empty. It can happen when I'm bored, especially. It happens very often. I just feel so empty no matter what I do, no matter who I'm around. I just feel like I'm always very negative and thinking of the worst. And, at the end of the day, I'll always have this sense of emptiness because I always know all the fun is going to end. So my mind just gets so empty. So I'll say to myself, I call them happiness hangovers, because I would do something fun and then after that I would feel so low and so empty, and I couldn't explain that. And it was because I felt this sense of emptiness with borderline, but also I had that fear of abandonment. So the fear of abandonment of my friend leaving me or my partner leaving me or anybody, and me being alone with my thoughts, drove me to feeling so empty. And emptiness kind of always pops up in my life. Say when I finish a big project, I'll feel extremely empty. When I finish doing a task and then I have that crash, I'll feel empty. I feel empty when I'm around people because I just know it's going to end, or I think it's going to end. I can't really explain that too much in depth, other than it just feels like an ending sense of doom in my life. I just feel so empty. No matter how many times somebody tells me they love me, it's hard for me to believe that, and I still feel empty and I still feel unloved. And it's very difficult to manage that aspect because I can't really just, do these skills and not feel empty. It pops up, and I can't help that feeling of feeling empty when somebody's not there. I can work on the codependency feelings that I have in relationships and my attachments to people, but that feeling of being empty still sits and still lingers, and I'm not sure how I could just use a skill to get out of that. But I'm trying to learn how to manage that emptiness because it's so dreadful and it just lingers all day, all night. So, ineffective instability marked by reactivity of mood. So, mood fluctuation, episodic dysphoria, which basically, can be anxiety, instability in moods, fluctuation. It's so frequent for me. A lot of people will say that they feel really low for at times, but for me, it fluctuates so much all day. Sometimes I'll be low for a while, but it's dependent on my circumstances. So if something really rough has happened in my life, obviously I'm going to feel low for a while. If nothing very prominent has happened in my life, my mood will fluctuate so often. And I do get in times where I have severe depressive episodes because I do struggle with major depression. So I will have times where I'm severely depressed and I can't get out of bed, I can't do anything. But then I also have times where my depression isn't really affecting my borderline too much, and I just have the depression with the borderline where I get severely empty and severely down and sad, but it's not consuming my life so much. But that being said, the fluctuation of moods, I get extreme highs, extreme lows. I'll be extremely hyper, and then I'll be extremely low. That being said, I also am trying to look into if I have ADHD. I have spoken to a psychiatrist who has noted that they do believe I have ADHD. However, I'm going to get a follow-up because having comorbid ADHD with borderline would help me understand a lot of aspects that borderline can't really explain in my life. So that would be very helpful. And I'm not sure if that also, may contribute to the hyperness I feel. But it'll be like extreme highs of hyperness and, cleaning all the time and dancing and singing, taking a million stories on my Instagram and not even posting them. And then I'll get this crash and I feel extremely empty and bored and I don't know what to do with myself. And then I feel really low. And so I'll feel that life is amazing. And when I feel euphoric, I truly feel that life is always going to be amazing. Same when I feel sad. I feel life is never going to get better. And those feelings are so strong that I can't see that gray area when I'm in either mood to think of the opposite. So when I'm having the best time and I'm thinking I'm going to use my skills, everything's going to be better, I've got BPD under control, I truly believe that in that moment. And that's what makes it so difficult, is because then I hit that crash and I'm back to square one, and it's that, instability in mood where, I feel so prominently about both sides. When I hate people, I hate them. When I love them, and I can't really identify what I'm feeling because I'm bouncing back and forth from both constantly. I never really understand how I'm feeling a lot of the time because it can switch in seconds. I can be so sad about something and go in the car and start driving and hear a bit of a music, like a song I like, and start dancing and getting euphoric out of an episode that was sad, and now I'm in a happy episode. So it's extremely interesting. But the fluctuation of mood is something I've struggled with my entire life. It has gone worse when I've gotten comfortable with people. So when I was in a long-term relationship for 9 years, it was different. We got extremely comfortable together, so I felt that I could be myself and engage in those moods more often. Where when I was around my parents, I had to kind of mask that part of my life a lot, and the feelings I had were internal, and I had to kind of, when I was younger, I displayed a lot more symptoms of quiet BPD, whereas I'm getting older and I'm in a relationship with somebody that I've been with for a while, away from my parents, I felt more comfortable displaying those externally and voicing things. So it was very interesting for me to identify that and, notice that the reason I was having so much mood changes as an adult is because, I was comfortable expressing myself and having those mood changes. I didn't have to suppress that. That being said, it's one thing I'm trying to manage right now. My mood swings are something that's very difficult. I absolutely hate that I'm high one minute and then low the next. I'm trying to find that balance so I can be medium, because I don't want to always be high or always low. I just want to be medium sometimes. So I'm trying to get to that area through working on a lot of DBT skills, which is very difficult, but I'm trying. Okay. So inappropriate and intense anger. This is something I have struggled with a lot of my life. When I was young in school, I used to get in trouble a lot for hurting people when I was angry. Mostly boys, which is very interesting, but I would get in trouble a lot. As a teen, I was getting suspended a lot. I got in trouble with the law for fighting a lot. I had a lot of built up rage. And as I got older, it just kept boiling up, and I wasn't managing it. So as I started getting older, I started punching walls and hurting myself. I broke my foot from kicking a door. I've hit myself in the head a million times, really causing severe damage probably. And, hitting myself is something I've done since I was young with rage. But as I've gotten older, my punches become harder. I've become more strong, more angry, and I'm hurting myself more. And I have more rage built up that I wasn't managing. So with my anger, it's not often I have anger. It usually just boom, bounces up to rage, and I'm raging. It could be down to screaming at my partner, screaming at my friends, saying things I don't mean, punching things, throwing things. It's insane. Screaming. Like, my anger is very intense. It's something that I've really struggled with, and not everyone with BPD will struggle with rage. Not everyone with BPD will struggle with any of these symptoms. They're all different. But with my rage, it's very severe, and it's something that as I'm an adult, I'm learning this is not something I can just have. I have to balance my rage. Anger is okay. Anger is a healthy feeling. Rage is not. Anger obviously usually tells us something needs to change. Rage usually tells us something needs to be changed within us, and we need to work on ourselves. So rage is something I'm really managing as an adult through working out. I've taken anger management. I've learned a lot about where my anger stems from, why I'm so angry. I've tried to identify those aspects. But my rage has always been there. In school, I would break windows. I would get in fights with people at lunch. Like, I had so much rage, and I didn't really realize that it wasn't normal. Growing up, I thought I was just a mad teenager and it was normal to be that angry. But I wasn't just angry. I was raging all the time, and it went from 0 to 100 so quick. I was always suspended, always getting in trouble with the law. Like, I just kept getting in trouble because I was so angry, and I didn't understand that that's what was going on. And when I would drink when I was younger, it would just heighten the anger. My rage was so heightened when I was drinking that most times when I got in trouble with the law was when I was drinking, because I would make a stupid decision drunk, I would fight somebody, and I would be very angry. Alcohol really heightened my rage. So once I stopped drinking, I was able to really manage that part of my life and really work on, why am I so angry? How can I manage this anger? How can I get to a level where I can respond effectively rather than reacting? So now at this point in my life, the gym really does help me get off that extra energy. It's obviously not a quick fix. I can't just go to the gym when I'm raging. In that sense, I'll engage in DBT skills like TIP. So I'll put ice on my face to calm myself down, run upstairs to get that energy off. But I have to get that energy off, because if I don't, then I will start to rage. If I don't take that second to walk away, I will say something I don't mean, because I'm very impulsive. So that's where the impulsivity comes in, and my impulsivity and rage can go hand in hand. So when I'm raging, I'm extremely impulsive, and vice versa. So it's important to make sure that I actually balance my rage, because as I'm getting older, I can't keep burning bridges. I can't keep walking off jobs angry, walking away from friends. I can't keep doing these things in my life because they're not effective. It's not helping me grow as a human. So I'm learning that I really need to start managing this part, and through things such as the gym, doing things like that. I know it's so cliche, like go work out, it'll help, but it does. For me, that works. Find what works for you. Since I've been going to the gym, it's really helped me. When COVID hit, that's when I broke my foot in my 20s as an adult. I broke my foot kicking a door because I was so angry. I was so raged out at something that was, figured out within 20 minutes. But because I was so mad in the moment, I wasn't thinking of it, and I was just impulsive, kicked the door, and really hurt myself. As an adult, I learned that your body doesn't bounce back as quick. I can't do these things as I'm getting older because I need to start managing it, as it's really affecting my life. And if I keep burning these bridges as an adult, it's really going to set me back. So as you get older, you do tend to start, once you're diagnosed and start working on it, you do tend to become aware of these things. And some people get diagnosed later in life, some people earlier. So it all just depends on your own life experience when you get diagnosed. For me, I started noticing it in my 20s. I'm still very angry. I still work on my anger and manage it. I still have to consistently go to the gym. I notice if I stop going to the gym, my irritability will get higher. My rage starts to kick in. Even if I'm just hangry, I can start raging over nothing. So I have to really start taking care of aspects of my life, like eating well, taking care of myself, because they do really affect my rage. Even though they're so minimal to other people, Eating in the morning sets the tone for my entire day. I don't suppress my appetite. I'm not irritated. Going to the gym helps me. It burns off that energy. I feel productive. I feel good. So these things are really going to help you manage your rage. So find what works for you to burn off that steam. Really burn it off. Find something that gets that energy going. Don't just sit there and knit. Obviously, find something like whether it's biking or running or going for a walk even. Just find something that gets your heart rate going, gets you moving. Okay, last thing. So stress-related paranoia. I have this all the time and severe dissociative symptoms. This is something I struggle with tremendously in my life. I will dissociate in class. I will dissociate when somebody's speaking to me. It happens so frequently and I can't really control it. I don't know why it happens. It just does. It is very stress related when it comes to dissociating in times, but I can't often identify that before I do dissociate and it just happens. So that's something that's been very prominent in my life. My mother used to dissociate and I didn't really identify this until I was older and started noticing the behaviors. I started doing it probably around my teens is when I really noticed I would dissociate often during class time or talking to a friend, or, I would just dissociate if I was having a bad day. My whole day would be a blur and I didn't even feel like a real human. So it was it's very off. It's a very consuming feeling dissociating because I couldn't really bounce myself back. As an adult, I do know mindfulness skills are the best for that because they bring you back to the moment. But growing up, I would dissociate constantly. I would just blank out. I just felt like every day was a blur. Voices were echoed. People felt unreal. And I just felt like I was not even living. I was just walking on earth, just walking. I wasn't even a real person. And I still get times like that. I have times where I'll just dissociate for hours. And it's not that I'm just in a dissociative state where I'm staring off into space. Sometimes it looks like that. Sometimes I'm dissociating while even watching a movie or doing homework, or, my mind is just like not there. I just don't feel real. I feel like I'm in a fog. I feel like I'm not even living. When it comes to paranoia, I struggle with that a lot. My partner tremendously, when I'm with a partner, it will really stem in that. In friendships, I always think that they're talking about me. They don't like me. They're doing things without me. With a partner in a romantic relationship, I think they're always cheating on me. They don't love me. They don't want to be with me. I'm always paranoid that they have some different intent than they do. I always think everybody's out to get me. I struggle a lot with paranoia. I always just believe that there's just, an ulterior motive to everybody's behaviors. And I really do struggle with being paranoid about everything. Growing up, my parents and family would call me panicker because I would panic about everything. And I would always be so paranoid and worry about things. And this, as an adult, I started, understanding it does stem a lot from borderline. And I didn't know that as a child. But I did always have paranoia. I've always been a very paranoid person, very jealous, anxious. And these are things I'm starting to work on as an adult to kind of just diminish because, all of these symptoms are really affecting my life in such different ways. And it's all as a whole really affecting me. And I need to balance it because these symptoms are not doing me any good. When it comes to managing borderline, there's a huge pervasive pattern of instability in relationships. And I'm trying to manage that aspect of my life. I'm trying to really heal from borderline and learn about it. I have become so aware in the last 4 years since getting diagnosed, but awareness does not automatically equal change. You do have to put in the effort to that. So at this point in my life, I'm just trying to kind of identify where all these show up in different parts of my life and trying to understand, how I can manage each one. So what I'm doing is kind of just writing down the symptom, how it displays in my life, and ways that I can kind of balance each thing. So fear of abandonment, worried that my partner's always going to leave me, maybe ask for reassurance, things like that to just try and help me balance it. But at the end of the day, I know that I will manage this, and I do want you guys to know that you can too. We're not stuck with borderline. Try to identify yourself. The key is in learning about yourself, learning about your behaviors, do the education, put in the work, just learn about yourself. But secondly, put in that work to changing and being aware, acknowledging, because that's really where the growth lies. You can become aware of all these behaviors, but without actually putting in that change, nothing's really going to happen in your life. So I just identified my symptoms. That being said, I do think it's a great idea going forward for you guys to identify yours. What symptoms are you displaying? Write them all down. So that's your homework for today from YouTube, is to go write your homework down and write your symptoms and how they're displaying. But next week I'll go into a bit more about my triggers and kind of how I experience those. So please stay tuned for that video. I will post it on, I believe, Thursday. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that will be up so you guys can see how I am managing my triggers, what specific triggers are really showing up in my life, and let's just tackle this crazy disorder that is really affecting our lives, because we are warriors and we are stronger than this disorder, and it is not going to beat us because BPD cannot break us. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.